Have you ever noticed that 100% of everything that every human being does, every activity, every goal we pursue, everything we expend energy on, every task we undertake, literally 100% of everything that human beings do is oriented towards one goal. Many different ways of accomplishing that goal, but still just one goal. Whether it's eating food, having sex, spending time with your friends, working really hard at a job or school for future prosperity, trying to earn the approval of friends and loved ones, working towards some great social cause so you feel like you've bettered mankind. Even altruism, stuff like giving money to charity or working at the local food shelter, like everything you could possibly think of that human beings do, we do for one goal. And that one goal is, whether now or in the future, to get dopamine in the brain. Literally everything that we do is to make our brains feel good. By definition, right? Because dopamine is the chemical currency of how your brain rewards itself. It is the definition of your brain patting itself on the back and saying, this was a good thing, I accomplished a good thing, and we all want that feeling. I bring this up because of how I felt right after vanquishing the Bell Gargoyles. I literally meant it. It absolutely felt a little bit like a short but intense drug high. It was a dopamine release. But when you think about what that implies, there's a real philosophical strangeness behind it. Because I wasn't doing anything that increased my chances of survival or procreation. I wasn't doing anything that showed altruism towards my tribe mates, so increased the likelihood of my genes surviving that way. You know, my relatives passing their genes, which carry many of my genes on into the future. I wasn't doing any of that. It was just a challenge that I overcame, and it felt really, really good. So I tried to think, what in the brain could possibly be triggering this dopamine release? I mean, like I said, I'm not gathering food, I'm not passing on seed, I'm not improving gene longevity, I'm not doing anything. I thought, well, I mean, anything we work toward, our brain is probably wired to reward us for. If you work very hard at something and then you accomplish it, I mean, there's a great likelihood that that's somehow improving your life or your standing in the world, right? So anything you struggle with greatly and then eventually achieve, it would make sense. But how does your brain know? How does your brain know that you've struggled? Is it, say, like the very complex series of inputs and outputs of quick decision making and juggling a lot of factors and acting on a hybrid between reason and intuition and just living right on that knife's edge between success and failure? You can imagine there's a lot of activity going through the brain at that point, a lot of and/or gates being opened and closed, neurons firing all over the place, lots of options being weighed, rapid split-second decisions being made, lots of activity happening in the brain when you're going through a really difficult boss fight, or if you're a prehistoric human who's hunting down a boar or something for his dinner, but you don't want to get gored by the tusks. And when you accomplish it and you kill that boss, or you spear the boar and skewer it and savor its wonderful meat, or even long before you savor the meat, there's the dopamine release of, I did it, I succeeded, I won. That's absolutely got a dopamine release to it. But how does your brain know if you aren't getting the taste of pork on your tongue? So is it just the very complex series of inputs and outputs? Maybe. That could be part of it. That could be the whole thing for all I know, but it seems that, at least in part, the brain is capable of rewarding itself based on what you believe. And that is completely loopy when you think about it. Because dopamine in large amounts it's a drug. It's a drug high. There's no other way of putting it. It feels exactly, maybe a lesser in intensity. I don't know. Maybe lesser in intensity, but certainly similar to getting some kind of a drug hit. It feels just about that good to get a big dopamine rush. But can it happen just because of what you believe? You know, I think I understand that I've been undergoing this great challenge. I felt frustration many times over and over again. And after putting in a lot of time and effort, I succeed, and I believe that I succeed. It's actually tipped over in my mind. This is an accomplishment. This has happened. And because I think it has happened, now I get this giant burst of dopamine. That's really strange, isn't it? To think that because what you believe reality to be, because what you think is going on in your situation of life, that your brain could reward itself and pat you on the back and say, oh yes, this is a great thing, you've done a great thing, GJ. That's really bug nutty and loopy, to think that what you think, what you understand, your belief of the situation of your life could cause a dopamine influx. Wow. Could you fool yourself into it somehow? I couldn't imagine how. I mean, if you decidedly, intentionally undertook the endeavor to believe you had accomplished things in order to get it... Actually, now that I think of it, there is exactly such a thing that happens. And maybe you realize you're fooling yourself into it or not, but confirmation bias and affirmation bias, being told that you're right by people in an echo chamber, that does feel pretty good. So, yeah, it seems like what you believe can cause dopamine. That's super crazy. That is really hard for me to wrap my head around. Oh, I'm grinding. Well, just doing a few minutes of farming souls. People said, oh, UD, it's going to be more difficult to backtrack all the way here to upgrade, so just farm up enough souls to purchase the Titanite shards and upgrade your shield and your weapons, and fair enough, I'll do that. Just a little bit. Or maybe more, I'm not sure. Time permitting.